Hello everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about collecting data. So in a statistical study, we have 5 different steps that we follow. First, we're going to identify the variable of interest and the population of the study, and that's kind of what we talked about in previous lessons. Second, we're going to choose a sample that is representative of the population, and this is kind of what we're going to be focusing on today, is how we choose that sample. 3, we collect the data, which we're also going to talk about today. Then we're going to organize and describe the data using a statistic. And so that could be average or standard deviation, proportion, things like that. And then 5, we interpret the data, make inferences, and draw conclusions about the population. And so there are many different ways of sampling a population, but a random sample is preferred because it's most likely to be representative of a population. So that's one sample type that we have, is a random sample. And that's a sample where each member of a population has an equal chance of being selected. So for example, maybe you have a sample of 50 people, you number each person 1 through 50, and you go through a random number generator and it chooses 10 people. That would be a random sample because every single person has an equal chance of being selected. And then we have these 5 other types of methods used to select members of a sample. First, we have a self-selected sample, and that is that members of the population can volunteer to be in the sample. So maybe you have a study you're doing and you have 10 people that volunteer to be part of it. A systematic sample is when a rule is used to select members of a population. So, for example, selecting every other person. A stratified sample is when a population is divided into smaller groups that share a similar characteristic, and then a sample is randomly selected from each group. So maybe if you're looking at a population in a high school, maybe you separate it in groups of class, so freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then you randomly select from each of those classes. A cluster sample is similar to that, but this is when a population is divided into groups called clusters. And then all the members in one or more clusters are selected. So going to that previous example, you might select all of the juniors to have in your sample. And then a convenient sample is when only members of a population who are easy to reach are selected. So it's convenient for you. So let's go through 5 examples of identifying types of samples so we see each of these. So directions, you want to determine whether students in your school like the new design of the school's website. Identify the type of sample described. Number 1, you list all the students alphabetically and choose every 6th student. So we're choosing every 6th student. So here I see that I'm using a rule to select the students. And the one where you use a rule is a systematic sample. I'm saying this is systematic sample. Number 2, you mail questionnaires and use only the questionnaires that are returned. So here we see the students are being mailed these, and the students can choose whether to respond. So since they can choose whether to respond, this is a self-selected sample. The students are volunteering to complete the questionnaire. Number 3, you ask all of the students in your algebra class. So this one is going to be a convenient sample because you are asking students that are readily available to you. They're in the same class as you. Number 4, you randomly select 2 students from each classroom. So here you are dividing this population into groups. In this case, you're dividing the population into classrooms, and you're choosing from each of those groups. So since you're choosing from each of those groups, this is going to be a stratified sample. Then And lastly, you divide the students in your school according to their zip codes, then select all of the students that live in one zip code. So again, here, similar to the other one, we are breaking up the population into groups, in this case zip codes. But this time instead, we're choosing all of one group. We're choosing all of one zip code. So because of that, this is going to be a cluster sample.